Thank you, Patrick. First off, I'd like to introduce the panel. To my left, we have Bruce McKay, who's the Senior Policy Advisor of Federal Affairs for Dominion Power. Next to him, we have Dan Lovelace, Business Manager of Local 602, UA Local 602 out of Washington, D.C. Next, we have Sean Strasser, Assistant Business Manager out of Local 602, Washington, D.C. Next to him, we have Bill Bodner, who's a Senior Project Director for Kiewit at Cove Point. And Gary Bone, he is the Senior Advisor to Kiewit Power Constructors. Just a little bit of background about Cove Point before we jump in. Each of our panelists is going to give a brief opening statement, and then we'll get into some questions. And at the end, we'll open it up from questions from the floor. Cove Point was built, a liquefied natural gas exporting component to the existing facility down there, about 60 miles south of Washington, D.C., in a town called Lusby, Maryland. The scope of work included the feed gas receiving area, pre-treatment facility, a liquefaction component, 130 megawatt power block. All this was quite challenging, built on a 54-acre site. For that amount of work, it's with the largest amount of work performed on that smallest site in North America. Really a logistical accomplishment, to say the least. Cost was about $4 billion. They began exporting liquefied natural gas in March to India and Japan. It was March of 2018. The project broke ground in 2014, and it was mechanically completed in 2017. A terrific effort by all the gentlemen that are sitting right here. At its peak, 10,000 craft workers from all our different crafts from the building trades spent time working at Cove Point. It was peaked at 650 UA folks on the job from 49 states. So it was really a team effort by everyone in this room. So with that, just a little bit of background, I'm going to turn it over to Bruce to give his opening statement on his experience from Cove Point.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. Cove Point, for our company, Dominion Energy, and we're a large, diverse electric utility, gas utility, pipeline company. We operate in about 15 states. Been around a long time. It was the single largest construction project we had ever undertaken. We have nuclear facilities that we had built some years ago, but in terms of scale and price and all, this was it. It's not an exaggeration to say that had it not been for the partnership with the unions, the project may not have happened. And I'll get into a little bit more about that later on the permitting front and some of the battles we faced to get through what was necessary to do the project. And it was a real positive experience, or learning moment for us for future projects on how to get through the hurdles that are thrown at you these days. But we're proud of it. The vice president of our company who oversaw construction for us, he's retiring in a couple weeks. Otherwise, he would be here. But when they got this up and running, I think he said, "There's nothing I can do in my career that will top this." He dropped the mic, and he's heading to clean out his locker real soon. So I'll speak to the extent I can for him. But otherwise, he'd be here and talk about the great experience he had working with some of the folks on the stage.
Thank you, Bruce. Danny?
Well, one of the things that I take away from this project was the unity involved with the contractors and Dominion Energy. I'd never been in a position where I had worked that closely with both entities to make a project like this come together. And it truly is. In the UA Journal, it said, I stated that it was a job of a lifetime, and it really is. I mean, when you think about you all are in the pipe fitting industry, when a project like this comes to your neighborhood, there's so many opportunities for it to go wrong, and yet very few for it to go right. And if it weren't for Dominion, the North American Building Trades, our efforts with the UA and Kiewit, this project never would have come off like it did. It was one of the greatest success stories that I can imagine, and being able to live it was truly an honorable thing.
Sean?
One of the things I would like to say is over the course of the project, I think we peaked out around 1,650 UA workers out there in January of 2017. But over the course of the project, we were probably in the neighborhood of somewhere around 3,000 UA members that came in and worked on the site, and I think the average length of employment down there was 6 to 7 months at a time. We had some members that were there for better than 3 years. But I want to thank everybody that sent your members out to work with us to help this thing be successful. Thank you very much.
Bill?
I'm just, I was kind of like what Danny said. I mean, that's why we get in this business, for the opportunity to work on a job like Cove Point. It was certainly a first-of-a-kind project for me. It represented about 20 million man-hours of engineering and construction and planning. So it was pretty remarkable and very rewarding to meet all the faces, the names, and hear about the places everybody came from to make it a success. It truly was a great team effort.
Gary?
I want to sort of echo everything that everybody said about Cove Point. It was a job that had all the earmarks that things could really go drastically wrong, and they didn't. And it was the partnership with the UA and the building trades and Local 602 and our owner that really, we faced hurdles that it's hard to even explain. Every man hour on that job, people had to be bused to the job. There was no parking, no lay down area. The thing it's a vertical thing that we had to build and in very challenging conditions. But with everybody, the communication that we had, we talked through our problems. We had problems every day, but we sat down and talked about how can we solve this problem, not whose fault it was or whose fingers need to be pointed, and that's how we got to the end of it. I've been in the business pretty much all my life. I'm a 55-year UA member, still active, and it was really heartening to be able to be on a project like this to the end of my career. It was just a fantastic experience, and we had UA members from 49 states that worked on that project. They had them from everywhere, and people came and packed their suitcases and came and helped us out, and it was just a great experience, and I'm really proud to have been part of it. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll get into the questions and answers, and I'd like anybody that feels like they want to make comments during the question and answer portion, feel free to jump right in. Now, we all know a tremendous amount of work went into the Cove Point before the first construction worker ever stepped foot on the project. Please talk about the amount of legwork that it took to get through the permitting, legislative, and environmental challenges that were presented to the team, and how you worked together to overcome these issues. And I'd like to hear from Bruce and Danny on that.
All right, so let me set the stage for you, for those that may not live in the Maryland region, and a lot of people don't. When we announced plans to add export capability at Cove Point, at that time, Democrats controlled everything in the state except for one U.S. House member. Both senators, governor, controlled both bodies of the legislature. Republicans had only one House member. I don't mean to be partisan here. I've been a Democrat most of my life, but Democrats in Maryland are pretty liberal. Maryland's a very green state. The Chesapeake Bay is holy water to people who live in Maryland. And we sit on the Chesapeake Bay and have a pier there and have to use it every day for ships coming and going. It's the last place in the world you would go and undertake a $4 billion fossil energy project if you didn't already have an import terminal there that was just 80 miles away from the Marcellus and Utica Shale. So we just thought the opportunity was too great, and that we would just work our way through the process despite some of the things I just described. Very early on, the decision was made to do a project labor agreement on the project for the reasons I described earlier, plus when we looked out at the workforce that was going to be needed and the expertise that was going to be needed. The decision was made, yeah, it'll cost a few extra dollars, but at the end of the day, it'll probably be done right, and it'll be done on time and predictably on budget. And it turned out to be all that. During the permitting process, at different times we had protests of hundreds of people in Baltimore at the Utility Commission when they were considering the permit for the power plant on site. We had there's one of the public meetings on the screen right now. We had protests in Annapolis around the legislature when they were meeting, but at the same time, union members in bright shirts were going and dropping off materials in every single legislator office. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the FERC in Washington, which is the ultimate permitter of the facility, protesters went and barred the doors, locked the doors down one day and kept employees from entering the building. So police had to arrest them and take them away. A protest was held one day where cutouts of all the Democrats in elected office in Maryland, they were held up on sticks outside FERC, and a guy in a black robe, they held a mock trial and judged all these Democrats guilty of crimes against the climate. That's very hard for a Democrat to withstand, politically, when you have that going on against you. The difference maker in that, I truly believe, it was the building trades and the members who were able to offset that extreme environmental pressure from that side. Long-term relationships with members like Steny Hoyer, the #2 Democrat in the House, in whose district Calvert County sits. The governor of Maryland at the time was considering running for president, and he did run for president. That didn't last very long, but the building trades and others were able to go in and have very frank conversations with him, and that really helped offset the impact of the environmental groups. So we went through the permitting process and had 12-hour public meetings where people came and talked against the project, but hey, we had a whole lot of people that talked in support of the project, and we got it done at the end of the day.
Okay, Dan, like to comment?
Well, when we first were contacted about this project, we thought it was a cruel joke. We just lobbied for 9 months for a third unit at Calvert Cliffs, our nuclear power plant facility, and that was shot down. So we were somewhat heartbroken about losing that project, and then we'd heard about Cove Point and the possibility of an expansion there, and we were ecstatic, and we thought, again, here we go again. We teamed up with the National Building Trades and Dominion. We sat down, we had several conversations about how we were going to approach lobbying for this job and how we were going to beat the opposition down to get this project completed. So we had a memorandum of understanding that Dominion said, if you all give us some support and help us out with this, we'll work as a team together to go up against the opposition and get this project permitted and under construction. So we did. We started getting our members together for some of these lobbying efforts, and our local had become pretty good at lobbying and going to Public Service Commission hearings and Federal Energy Regulatory Commissions, the League of Women Voters, and on and on and on. So we were pretty handy when it came to public speaking and going to these meetings. Where Cove Point is situated, we have a huge number of members down there in that Tri-County area, and some of those members were driving an hour and a half, 2 hours to go to work, and they were driving right by Cove Point on their way to Manassas, Virginia, wherever it was. So getting support from the local members was not an issue whatsoever. But the opposition was strong. Like Bruce was saying, it was an incredible number of people that were opposed to this project. And when we started going to these Public Service Commission hearings and seeing some of the people, they were the same people that helped shut down Unit 3 at Calvert Cliffs. And we thought, hell, here we go again. So we did some things that were different when we lobbied for this project. We joined the Sierra Club. All of our officers are Sierra Club members, and we started going to Sierra Club meetings. So we knew what was going on. We did everything that we could to try and get this thing permitted, and eventually it became permitted. But I know when Brad Karbowski was there, he was our international rep at the time, and he was there. Dominion helped us with some speaking points. It was a well-orchestrated effort to try and get this thing permitted, and it worked out well for us.
Thank you, Dan. It seems like, not only are we being recognized for the help we can bring to jobs with what we can perform in the field, but the upfront work, to going to all these town meetings and legislative and political hearings is a big help as well, and some of our owners are recognizing that now. The next question, projects of this size are challenging and difficult for all parties, labor, contractor, and owners. Can you comment on how the UA Standard of Excellence contributed to the successful execution and completion of Cove Point? And I'd like to hear from Gary and Bruce on that.
Well, I guess my opinion of Standards for Excellence, to me it's a first-class program, and we ought to be doing more of it. Basically, the standards for excellence at Cove Point, we actually did 3 different sessions, and we worked through John Yale, who was the representative for the UA, Jimmy Moss, Brad Karpowski, and we did one when we had about 200 UA members on the site. And I'll just speak to the side here. We did the same thing with the IBW on their Standards for Excellence program. And I think these programs helped tremendously to, number one, set standards for what people are expected to do from both the craft, the management, and the owner. We all have a big stake in Standards for Excellence, and I think it's a great tool to use. And you know, it's a good tool to use on any project if you have you know, the time to implement it. And you know, it's for smaller projects probably not as important, but on a project of this size, we did the first one with 200 members. The second go around of the Standards for Excellence, we had over 1,500 UA people on the job. We did all 3 shifts. We did the 2 day shift and 1 night shift all in a 24-hour period. The session was great. It was sponsored and supported fully by the UA, Danny and Sean, and we had Brad, and we had Mark McManus. We had the whole staff, everybody. Our management was there, the president of Kiewit Energy. What it does for the members is it lets you know that there's a joining at the top. It's not us and them. We're all in this thing together. The client, the unions, and the owners, and the contractor are all on the same sheet of music, and it helps focus the job. How important it is that we finish this job, how important it is that we put good quality in the work, how important it is that we come to work every day. Those things are, you know, you say it and say it and say it, but it's good when the management of all 3, the heads of all organizations are saying, this is what we expect from you guys, from everybody. So I think that the Standards for Excellence program was a big boost for the project, and it really helped. We had UA members from 49 states on the site. We were all one team. You know, wherever you were from, you were here to do a job, and we wanted to do it well and come out of it with everybody's reputation intact. We can man these kind of projects. I think there were a lot of doubters internally in our own company. You know, sometimes we looked at the numbers we had to come to, what we had to accomplish, and how we had to do it. And he said, "Boy, this is a heavy lift." But we had all kinds of support from all 3 organizations, and my attitude is it's a great tool.
Thank you, Gary. Bill, we'd like to hear from you as well.
Well, when I think of Standards of Excellence, the world was watching this project. I mean, these LNGs had the perception that, you know, they were late, they were over budget, et cetera. So the world was watching, and we had no choice but excellence. And the Standard for Excellence, you know, provided common ground where we could help build trust, communication, and commitment to, again, be all in it together. Say, a month prior to our meeting, you'd run into a craftsman out on the project, and what are you working on? And it was like, I'm welding a joint, which is a fine answer. But after the Standard for Excellence, what are you working on? I'm working on a world-class, first-of-a-kind LNG facility. It was almost motherhood and apple pie. It was more than about just welding. It was, the world was watching, and we're going to do it faster. We're going to do it more productive. We're going to do it safer than anyone has come before us.
Great. You know, on top of that, the Standard of Excellence was achieved great success under General President Height's leadership, and now General President McManus has also expanded that. We're doing presentations on job sites, at union meetings, in corporate headquarters of some of our, Kiewit's one of them, some of our large contractors. We have a standard of productivity presentation and a standard of safety standard of safety presentation, which have both been very well received, and we offer that up to any users or contractors in the room that would like us at a job site or one of their offices. We'd be more than happy to be there to help you get a project going. Next question, and this is for Sean and Danny, and I'm kind of proud of you guys for this one. There were no grievances, there were no work stoppages, and there were no jurisdictional disputes filed on the Cove Point project. Truly remarkable on a job this size. And I'd like to ask Sean and Danny what they attributed this to, and if Bill Biden would like to make a comment as well. But that's a heck of an accomplishment, fellas.
Well, I'll tell you, when we went to the first markup meeting when Kiewit was awarded the job, I believe it was Howard Bartlett. I can't remember if it was Howard. Howard had all the trades there, and there were laborers there. Everybody that was going to be involved was in this big room, and Howard Bartlett, I'll never forget it. Howard Bartlett started walking across in front of everybody and looking at everybody like he was going to challenge them, and he said, "I want to get one thing straight right here and right now." And I was sitting in the front row, and he pointed to me and he said, "This job is a pipe job." And I could see everybody else just going, ooh. But he meant it. And we work well with our crafts in our area. We do. We have a good relationship with the boilermakers, as hard as that is to believe. Electricians and every other trade, we communicate with them, and we're all on the same team. And I think when we started lobbying for this job, we became closer and we started working together even better. So we were real fortunate that the trades that were involved were understanding. There were a couple of decisions made on that job as far as the rigging of some of the large vessels, and Kiewit wanted pipe fitters on it. So most of the rigging for some of the large vessels that some other project would have gone with the Boilermaker, Kiewit allowed us to do it, and I got to say the rigging on that job in itself was completely and totally amazing. Some of the heaviest equipment that I'd ever seen in my life anyway.
Sean?
Well, with regards to the grievances and things like that, I got to attribute a lot of that to our stewards, Ricky, Thiel, and Roland Johnson. They were able to handle a lot of the issues on site before they became issues. And if it did get anything would be elevated above that, we had really good communication with the contractor. Didn't always agree, and there was sometimes might have had some heated conversations, but we were always able to come to some sort of agreement and straighten an issue out. And that's how a lot of that worked out. But there was a lot of hours going back and forth, getting things straightened out. But I do have to attribute a lot to those guys on the site that were able to keep things going in the right direction.
Bill, would you like to comment on that?
I think one of Cal's traits earlier was persistence, and I mean that was my focus, is to be persistent in driving down what I would probably say is my 3 or 4 traits of a labor leader, and that's one is you need to be accessible and visible and have that good communication that these guys talked about. And 2, you need to be a good collaborator. It's just we all have our buckets of expertise. Maybe it's engineering, logistics, estimating, building, and we just need to work off of each other. And then probably the third thing is good recognition. We need to be quick to coach, not punish, and say thank you and appreciate what the fellows, folks, guys and gals are doing out there on our projects.
Thank you. Next question. The UA goes to great lengths to ensure our members are properly trained to perform work on large industrial projects. Can you talk about how Local 602 and the UA went above and beyond the call of duty to ensure we had enough qualified mechanics to perform the work? And I'd like to hear from Danny and Sean.
Well, when the project first started, of course, the number one concern was, and we said it at every public hearing that we ever went to, that there was always a question of being able to supply the manpower and necessary to complete the project. And it was scary to try, and we had heard the numbers, and we started talking about where we were going to get them and the right type of people. This RMD weld process that was coming along was, I think at the time when that project started, it was 17 UA certified members that had that test, and it was hard to get them. We reached out to everybody we could. We beefed up our training department to try and make sure that we were prepared so that when these welders came in there, we could train them up, get them familiar with it and whatnot. And but trying to find the right type of people for a project like that, we hadn't done a large industrial job. We had some outages on some of the coal-fired plants in the area, but we didn't really have what was known as an industrial local. But, you know, luckily for us, the people that were down in Southern Maryland, most of the people that wanted to come did have industrial experience, and they helped a lot of those people. Kiewit was really good about helping to train up some of the people on the job as well. So it was a challenge, but we got through it. And at first, we weren't getting the number of people and the kind of people that we wanted. And I remember when Gary came on the job, and it was a big concern. There was a lot of fear that we weren't going to get the people and this thing was going to go south on us. But when Gary showed up, and I'm not saying it because he's here, but he turned that thing around. When you put a UA guy in charge of a project like that, it turns things around. And before that, it wasn't a UA guy that was in charge of that project, and that made all the difference in the world. So I attribute a lot of that and us being able to get the right type of personnel to Gary himself.
Sean?
Well, I think, you know, one of the things that really, finding out exactly what the needs of the contractor was at the particular time, because there was, over the course of the job, there was, you know, it progressed from underground to above ground to when they went vertical into the racks, and, you know, there's different skill sets and all that that were required at different times during the project. And having good communication with the contractor about what do you need this week, what do you need next week, what do you need, you know, a month from now. And, you know, the schedule started accelerating at certain points, but there was good feedback on what are your needs going to be. And by getting that from them, we were able to send that out to you guys. And, you know, some of you got emails from me, sometimes on a weekly, sometimes, you know, when we were really, really busy, phone calls, emails, postings on the UANet, and that was a tremendous effort that we did to try and bring people from outside the local once all of our members had gone to work down there. And that's one of the ways, some of the ways that we helped get all those people down there.
You touched a little bit on the Miller R&D process. It was deployed at Cove Point on a grand scale. Can you comment on how much effort was put into this concept by both the contractor and the UA? And what recommendations do you have for some of our locals and contractors in the audience about using this technology on a large project? Because there are so many big projects coming out over the next probably 7 to 10 years. We're going to be building a lot of work on these LNG plants, and I think that Miller R&D process can be a big help in enhancing productivity and efficiencies on this job. Gareth, would you like to comment?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about R&D. Many of you in the audience have been to the UA welding seminars and schools, and basically R&D is just another tool in our quiver. Folks talked about having, you know, tools, arrows in your quiver. R&D is a new process. It's not new to the industry, but it's new to industrial construction. We'd used it on several power plants prior to Cove Point, and it was a decision that was made in the planning process to our Cove Point to use that process, that welding process. And we knew that there was not a lot of people qualified for it. What we've done in the past, and we continue to do when we go into an area to work, is try to partner with the local, take a look at what they've got in their training program. We supplement with welding machines, materials, that type of thing to help the training process. The other thing that's been a big boon to us that we think is a great program is we used a lot of welders out of the Aurora Training Center. We got a lot of support from Mark Buss, from at the time Chad Dawson and Dave Hintz at Aurora, and we went in and spent time with the guys at Aurora, showed them what we were looking for, helped them, you know, focus what we were needing at Cove Point. And as a matter of fact, I'd like to say we probably took at least 70 welders out of Aurora for that project to supplement 602's people. We worked with the apprenticeship coordinators at 602. We bought equipment and helped them. They came to the front too and bought more equipment. We went in and we did all of our testing up at 602. We had a guy up there almost full time working with their training coordinator. And this process really paid off in the field because the welding grew from what we had originally planned. It went up almost 40%. And we talked, this is to backtrack a little bit, we talked about manpower. We'd planned to peak at about 1,000 UA members, and you heard the number, it was 1,650. When we got to that, and you know, probably 150 of that 1,650 add was welders that we needed. So we were working in a lot of different quarters, and of course I think the key to all of it was we communicated, we trusted each other. We let you guys know what we needed. You told us what you could do and what you couldn't do, and then we worked out how we were going to get to the end of the process. But RMD is a welding procedure, a technology that it's one of many that are out there, and we're going to see we're going to continue to see innovation in welding. And I guess all I could say is we need to embrace it, not try to fight it and say we didn't do it that way last year, so why do we have to do it that way this year? And just grab a hold of it and say this is what we're going to do, and work as a team to get that done.
Thanks, Gary. Dan, I know it's a big challenge for you guys to come up with that, all them RMD welders. How'd you handle that? And what advice can you give to some of our local unions out there that are going to come up against this in the not too distant future?
You know, Mike, at first, at that time, the UA helped us out some, and well, quite a bit actually, and Kiewit was willing to, you know, come up with some machines for us, because we didn't have any RMD machines at our school whatsoever. Like I said, at the time that the project started, there were 17 UA welders that had that cert. We went to our apprenticeship committee, and we told them pretty much, you know, when local contractors see Kiewit come into your neighborhood, they're not really that supportive initially. When you start explaining to them how it's going to benefit everybody, they come around, and so we bought 10 machines and built. We ended up gutting a copper shop that we had there at the school and putting it in an RMD area, and we had Kiewit supplied us with some knowledgeable people over there that were able to train these people up, and we changed the whole process of bringing the welders in. Didn't bring in welders that couldn't weld initially, and we didn't bring in people that were going to waste our time. We brought in people that were skilled welders, TIG and stick welders, that could make that adjustment into the RMD process. And for a good welder, it's not that much of a change, but Kiewit supported us a lot, and like I said, the UA was right there with us, and it brought in the training that we needed, so we were pretty fortunate.
All right, this question is going to take a little bit of a different track here, and this is for Gary and for Bill Bodner. I'd like to hear from Bill first. According to McKinsey & Company, leading global construction managing consulting firm, the construction industry is way behind other industries in embracing digital technology to improve efficiency and productivity on large projects. Can you tell us some of the new information technology that was deployed at the Cove Point site that improved these areas of concern? Bill.
Well, first it started with, we had a Wi-Fi grid on the job, all 54 acres, that was lit up like a Starbucks coffee shop. I mean, so no matter where you went, we had Wi-Fi coverage. So accessibility to the internet was number one. And then number two was, we started with the end in mind, and we had to sell the job. Now, how are we going to prove to FERC, you know, quality without being organized? We had 52,000 welds to make and 18,000 bolt-ups to make. And they wanted to know the pedigree on each and every one. Who did it, when they did it, type of material, filler metal, the whole 9 yards, right? So we used a program called Mobile Frame that kept track of every joint. And when any time a FERC inspector would come out, he'd point at a joint, and we had the full pedigree, all the certs right there at the palm of the foreman's hands. So it was just fantastic and allowed us to sell the job and get online all the more quicker for the client. Probably, you know, one other thing we did is, you know, we used mobile time card technology, which is, you know, probably becoming more and more prevalent. But we had a coding structure that afforded, you know, the foreman out in the field to know exactly where they were at, whether it was by area, by system, by level of rack, with how they were performing on a cost versus budget basis at the end of the day. They'd enter their time, they'd talk about their quantities, And, so it was giving them real-time feedback on how they could, help schedule, give us feedback. And then probably the last thing was just using the modeling out there with the iPads that all the foremen had. They could, use it for work planning. They could use it for clash detection. So the place was pretty wired, but probably the number one thing is when you're working a FERC job, these types of jobs, nuclear job, documentation is everything, quality is everything. Start selling the job day one, and you have to have a good system for that.
Gary?
I would just say that we're going to see more and more of the electronics in the workplace, and from a local union standpoint, you need to get ready, and maybe some iPad training. We've got a lot of members that are not comfortable using computers or iPads. The younger fellows are, but some of the folks that's been in the business for a while, I'm a great example of that. It's a big lift for me to be able to go on a computer and look at a model and try to figure out where I'm going to route some small bore. But this is what it's coming to, and we need to embrace this. It's no reason to fight it. This is what's coming. This is the new world, and what we talked about in the report. McKinsey and Company says we're not adapting fast enough in our industry. So we need to embrace that at the local level and include that in our training more and more in our training of getting people comfortable with using iPads and computers out there in the field. It's not the be-all and do-all of everything, and a big part of it is being able to trust that the information is sound. That's the key to going out and being a craftsman, a foreman, is the information that you're giving your people needs to be correct. And so you need to figure out how you're going to obtain that information. So I'd just say this is something that's, especially on these FERC projects, like Bill said, nuclear projects, where the documentation is so important, you have to adapt. And the RMD welding process was an example. When that came up for us, we tried several different processes of how can we weld things strong and good and work faster. And that's what RMD does for you. It gives you better productivity. It's a help, and you got to embrace it. Don't fight it and say we don't want to do it that way because we've never done it that before. This is technology. We're in a technology age, and we have to embrace technology. That's all.
Okay. So, next question. The fact that piping fabrication was included in the agreement meant a great deal to the UA. Many of our members and contractors had an opportunity to participate in building Cove Point from remote locations in our fabrication shops. Can you comment on how this process helped achieve success at Cove Point? I'll ask Bill Bodner to.
Well, I think most of our pipe fab was done in Wisconsin. I think we had maybe 4, maybe even 5 shops up there. I think I saw some of them. Some of the folks walking around here this morning. Local 400s, men and women, are some of the greatest in the country. It's a high caliber workforce up there, but what really helped the job is, again, collaboration with them on how we could get, the fullest or greatest extent possible fabricated up there to shed risk from the site conditions down in Maryland. If we could prefab something, that was going to take critical path hours off of the job, and it was still going to be done by the union. So it was great collaborating with them. I think they fabricated over 400,000 linear feet of pipe, up to 80-foot spools, which is, they told us that was the first time anybody ever suggested that. I'm not sure that we do it again, at least in all instances, but it just allows the man hours to be done earlier in the project. It makes the project, I think, a little safer because you're taking awkward welds out of the racks and working it on firm level ground in a shop. So that worked really well, and made the schedule more palatable for us, and probably made us more competitive when we were estimating the project. Gary?
Yeah, the Appleton Local 400, they did the predominance of our fabrication. I have to say, all I can do is give kudos to Jeff Knaus and Mark Buss, and we got a lot of support from the Local 400. We got a lot of support from the UA in our fabrication efforts, and you know, they came through for us. You know, first class, first quality job, but it wasn't without problems. You know, we're sitting up here talking about how good it was. There was a lot of problems on this job, serious issues that came up, but again, we go back to communication. We kept talking about the problems. You know, Brad Karpowski was our local contact with the International, and you know, these guys, we brought them into, they knew where all the warts were, because it wasn't a perfect fit for a lot of things. Fabrication, we got balled up and we had those shops working, you know, 24/7 trying to get our stuff out in time. One of the things that made this job so difficult was it was a stacked job, and we couldn't start at level 3 or level 4. We had to start at level 1, level 2, level 3, and when you get out of sequence, you know, things go to hell pretty quickly. So we had a lot of support from Local 400, from the International, you know, and we kept Danny and Sean in the loop on, you know, things weren't always real pretty, but we worked through them. And again, it's all about trusting each other and having each other's back and not pointing fingers, but let's see, how can we fix this problem? I mean, that's the big part of it.
Bruce, you'd also like to comment?
From a Dominion perspective, you know, our mantra is safety, on time, on budget. This contributed to the on-time portion of it significantly, and it may be difficult sometimes to understand, you know, what does 6 months matter? This will be in service for decades, right? Don't get so uptight about it. But in a publicly traded company like ours, when you're reporting your earnings every 90 days, and analysts are poring over every piece of evidence they can get of whether you're on track or you're not on track, and falling behind schedule, any sign of that, your stock price, you know, can take a dip, and it can cost literally millions and millions of dollars in shareholder value if you start falling behind. So there's a reason why we preach the on-time portion. So, and having the work like that was done, sequenced, and helping keep on time was very helpful.
Thank you. So, very important part of every job is safety. Safety critically important to every construction project, both large and small. Can you describe what safety measures and programs were put in place at Cove Point, and what are your opinions on why the job was considered a success regarding safety? And I'd put that up to anybody. Danny, I know you and I talked a lot about that.
Yeah, safety, it's got to be a record breaker. I don't ever recall a project anywhere near that size having so little incidences. It was amazing, honestly, but I think the one thing that Kiewit did, and initially when we had early pre-job discussions about safety and how they were going to approach it, they had an interesting concept of taking a pipe fitter and making, you know, setting him up as a safety guy so that he can talk to pipe fitters. So when you were on a job, and I mean, I know how I was, if a boilermaker came up to me and told me, you know, you're going to have to take that cord out of there or something like that, it wasn't likely going to happen. But when a pipe fitter come up to me and say, hey, Danny, how about that, then it's more palatable for me. And I think that our guys bought into that part of the program, and I don't know a whole lot about the other parts of the safety program. All I know is that it was successful, and that approach is something that we've talked to our contractors about, to put a pipe fitter, you know what I mean, in the safety, have him talk to pipe fitters about unsafe conditions and what they can do about that. I know that we made a couple trips to the job site, and when we were challenged to walk the job site and find safety issues that we could see, so that they could take hold of them, and I thought that was pretty effective as well.
Anyone else? Bill? Gary?
Well, you know, our client, my peer at the client used to always says, as safety goes, the job goes. So, you know, safety was a priority, the highest priority from day one, and it's a, you know, key part of our culture, Kiewit, that nobody gets hurt. I would say, you know, to echo Danny's sentiment, you know, that UA member was Charlie Romanoff, and he's out of, I think, 354, and, you know, we call that, he was our craft safety ambassador. So we kind of had a handful of them, from, you know, an electrician, iron worker, and those guys did really, really good at, again, training, coaching, not punishing. They weren't a safety cop. They were there to help and collaborate. Probably the second biggest thing we did on the job was our Craft Voice and Safety program, or our Civis program. And that created a culture where, we wanted everyone to have a voice out there, not just foremen, not just general foremen, not just the people up here. We wanted the apprentices to have a voice. We wanted the journeymen to have a voice. So we wanted to provide a partnership and a conduit for them to go straight to management, so we could get good open communication to achieve that goal of nobody gets hurt. And I chaired those meetings, right? So it started at the top, and they had a direct conduit to the top man on the job. So I think that went a long way, showing them the commitment and the seriousness. And, they felt good about bringing us concerns and issues. And again, maybe they didn't all get solved perfectly, but at least they feel like they were getting heard. And, if not, why not? We let them know their concerns. But it was a great experience.
Gary?
I just mentioned there was a lot of things that we tried to do as a company, and we did it in conjunction with the craft people, with the local unions we were working with. We also had a program. We utilized the building trades safety program. We had them do 2 complete audits. This was with the building trades down at the project. They came down, brought 5, 6, 7 people, and spent a full day and a half, and then we had a debriefing of what they found. I thought those were very helpful. The other thing that both Danny and Bill have mentioned is that we fostered with all the crafts, and we said the words, which you hear a lot of times, but we really meant that if there's a safety issue, you take care of it. You stop your work and fix the safety issue. You're not going to get punished. You're not going to get chewed out. This is important. It's important for us that you guys all get off this job in the same manner that you come on. You're not be carried off. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a credo of our company, and we really mean it. It's not just words we use or slogans. We really mean that. And the safety ambassadors did a great job. The Civis program that Bill mentioned, I think, was key, and that was we had different colored vests and the Civis program, and we had folks from all crafts in the Civis program. It's craft visual safety program, and those guys were out there, basically they'd see a problem, you go and talk to somebody about the problem, let's get it fixed. It's not a punishment, we're not going to give you demerits, you're not going to get written up, but fix the problem. So, it was not one thing, it was probably 10 or 12 different things that were done on the job to keep it safe. And when you have a job that big, it's so easy to fall into and the other thing I guess I attribute to part of the safety record on that job was extreme house cleaning. When you walk through a job and you're tripping and falling on cords and there's trash in the walkway, gives you a sort of a bad feeling. That wasn't tolerated, and it's a daily thing. It can't be done once a week or roll up once a month. You got to be at it every day. Clean the place up. Don't put trash anywhere but in a trash receptacle. String your cords where they're out of the places where people walk. Don't have tripping hazards. And we beat on that on a daily basis for 3 years, and it paid off.
Thank you. This next one is for Danny and Sean. Now, I understand that the UA manpower on the site reached about 1,650 fitters in January of 2017. That's a staggering number. We all know that. How did Local 602 rise to the occasion and send that many qualified people to Cove Point? And a lot of our business managers out there are going to need to know this information. There's some pretty large projects coming down the pike. So, Danny?
Well, number one, you got to put the right agent on it and get out of the way. And leave them alone. We opened up a satellite local. We rented an office down there close to the job. I don't know that had a lot to do with bringing members in, but it helped us communicate with Kiewit. And like Sean was saying earlier, the leeway that Kiewit worked with us on that. At first, the HR people that we were working with Kiewit would they had unrealistic demands. Give me 50 welders by Friday when they call you on Tuesday. So that changed. We talked to Keywood about that. We failed sometimes not getting the right people there and the right number of people there. But Keywood worked with us on it, and we had a big sit down and talked about the realistic approaches we could make to give Keywood what they needed and see that it was built on time. Now, when Sean had gotten more time to get these people together, we were more successful doing that. But to be told on a Tuesday that you need 20 people by Friday was pretty unrealistic, especially when you get the welders. But we reached out to everybody we could, you know what I mean? And I think that a key, and I mentioned it before, was when Gary came in, the one thing he said that I wanted to hear as a pipe fitter, I spent a lot of time on the road too, and the one thing that rang true was that he wanted that job to be a job that everybody wanted to be on. And I know when I was on the road, I didn't call my business manager to ask where a good job was, or I would go to the test booth, I'd talk to the welders, I'd talk to the other fitters on the job. Where you been? What's the job like? And that job became a job that everybody wanted to be at. And I give a lot of credit to Keywood for that. But that's how we worked through it. And we were just fortunate enough to get the people that we did. Honestly, every Public Service Commission hearing, every hearing we had, that was the number one question. And I kept on saying it, that yeah, we'll get the people. You give us a job, we'll get the people. And Brad was looking at me like, what? But it was difficult, but we got through it. And a great deal of it was because of Keywood's understanding and changing their way of doing things with us.
Sean, you were the guy in the frying pan there for most of the time, and you did a hell of a job, really. You did a great job staffing that project. What would you like to say about as far as that staffing goes?
Well, again, I have to, echo what Danny said. The more notice and time that we had from the contractor, Keywood, and labor relations over there, or what their expectations were and when were some reasonable, achievable dates to get those people on site. And things worked out really well once we did that. We had a big meeting in, I think it was September of about 2016, and we were looking at the 2017 of when things were gonna hit their peak for the fitters. And they said, this is where we need to be, and we're gonna start bringing all these people in mid-October. And we wanna bring in, and I think the number at the time was 100 to 125 fitters and welders each week. And that was gonna go on until they basically said, stop, don't send us any more. And that went on through about the end of the year of 2016. And there was, as I said earlier, posted things on the UANet, word of mouth, emails, phone calls to other agents, other locals, and just a constant process of getting communication with other people, and the word of mouth helped a lot too, because once the project, the perception of the project turned around some to be a very positive, and guys are making, when they're working 6/10s, they're making great money, and the guys, they wanted to come out and get some of that.
Thanks. Some of the things I know about Cove Point, to that point, it was a job where Local 602 did a wonderful job of welcoming the travelers on that job. Some of the slides, the earlier slides, there's a couple fellows on the job made that point that, when you showed up as a traveler to Cove Point, you were welcomed with open arms. They made sure you knew where all the good restaurants were, like Danny said, where all the good fishing holes were. Made them feel like they were part of the team and not, shunned them. They didn't let the bottom 10% get any type of grip on that job at all whatsoever. It was a Class A job run by a class local, and you guys really, I know you're proud of it, and everybody in this room should be proud of you as well. Tripartite, it was a Tripartite conference, and when I was a business agent, a business manager, I thought tripartite meetings on the job were extremely important. All the important components of the puzzle were in the room at the same time. You can only tell the truth when everybody's in the room. My question to you is, how often did you conduct these tripartite meetings, and how important do you feel that they were to the success at Cove Point? And I'll let Gary touch that one.
Well, we started out from the beginning. We had a monthly meeting, a tripartite meeting, with the owner in attendance. Several of our superintendents, construction manager, Bill always made the meetings, and that carried through throughout the job. And I think, over a period of 2.5, 3 years, you get to know each other. the premise of the meeting is it's open. If there's problems, we want to talk about them. I want to diverge for just a second and say we had a great bunch of stewards, and we had a bi-weekly stewards meeting also, and lots of problems that we had on the job. The stewards knew what the problems were. They brought them to us, and of course the key isn't telling you about the problem. It's making sure that you follow up and fix the issue. And we had a very good group of stewards. They understood from their business manager what was expected of them to keep the job going, try to make everything positive. And so, hey, there's problems. Is the contractor going to fix the problems, or the owner going to fix this problem or not? And so by the time we had the tripartite meeting, usually those issues the real sharp issues were solved, but we also brought things up. One of the things we used tripartite for was to do the schedule, a 90-day look ahead with all the business managers, so they knew what was coming to the best of our knowledge. And yes, things change, but once a month as a tripartite on a project of that size, or I'd say any project, is a great tool. It don't have to be a long, drawn-out thing. We usually kept the meetings to an hour, and if there was an issue, we either brought it up in the meeting, and if it affected everybody, or if it was one craft union had an issue, we'd talk about it after the meeting. But we did that, and the owner was there. He understood what was going on. So I think that was very important.
Bruce?
Yeah, and I had talked with Bob McKinley, the gentleman who just is about to retire, as I mentioned, and what he said he learned through it, especially on a project that lasted as long as this one did, that you develop those relationships. So yes, you would meet every month, but before long, you'd pick up the phone if something came up. You got to know each other well, and you wouldn't necessarily wait for the next meeting. You just felt comfortable getting after little issues before they became big issues and would, be brought up later, and that was just a real benefit.
Okay. So, job's completed. You're selling gas to India and to Japan. So Dominion chose J.J. White to perform the maintenance work at the facility under the National Maintenance Agreement, which to me is terrific. I used to tell my members at home all the time, the maintenance work is the gift that keeps on giving, and this is what happened here at Cove Point. It's another part of the success of this project. What considerations went into that decision so our audience can learn from your experience at Cove Point and hopefully replicate that outcome, winning more maintenance for our contractors and our local unions? Bruce.
Well, as I understand it, was through a competitive process that it was made successful. The fact that some of the same people that worked to construct the project, I guess, then moved on to work on the maintenance, that was really important, and I imagine there will be those people for quite a while to come. They know how the project was built, and they therefore would know best how to do maintenance work on it. First evidence, in September we had the planned shutdown to do the initial maintenance. That was done on time without any safety reportable, so it's been a success story so far. I believe this gets redone periodically, and to be honest, I don't know what that schedule is, but I think the feeling is so far so good.
Thank you, Bruce. So this will be the last question, and then we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. And this question goes to everybody. Gary, I'll start with you, and we can go right down the aisle here. So Cove Point was a terrific success for all of us. We know there will always be room for improvement in any endeavor. Given the chance to build Cove Point again, what would you do differently on the next project? Gary.
Well, I wasn't in on the very beginning of the project. I wasn't there at the start, but I would say for any locals or areas that are anticipating these large projects, the more communication you can have with the contractor, the owner, and put together a good plan of how we're going to man work, get all the knowledge you can about it is super important. Communication and trust. You got to trust each other. We're in this together. It isn't us against them. We're all in this thing together, and we got to build the project together, and we can come with a good success. And I would say again, Cove Point had all the earmarks of a job that could go south. It could have really been a disaster, because it was very difficult to build the project in the place it was. Bruce talked about a 55-acre site. You're going to pour $4 billion of work in there. no place to park, no place to lay anything down. I mean, really a tough deal. But if you communicate and you trust each other, you can make it work.
Okay, Bill Bodnar.
I see on the slide there, it says finishing strong together. I would probably suggest starting strong together as well. The Cove Point was almost a tale of two cities. It's a 5-year job. The first 2 years is engineering and planning, and the last 3 years was the execution. I would challenge us, everybody in the room, to, start that training, that tripartite atmosphere, earlier than when site work starts. Start talking about the expectation for technology, the expectation for safety, the expectation for quality, because again, we're all kind of know our little world or span of control really well. Let's start collaborating earlier, and I think, a strong start will help, the finish.
Okay, Sean.
Communication, more communication. I know that excuse me. I know that, throughout everything we've said here this morning, there's been, the keys that made this thing be successful in the end was the communication, but early on, it wasn't there. And the more communication you have, the better things will go, and I don't think you can have too much of it.
Okay, Danny.
I think, like Bill said, to get the thing started stronger, I think that the key was the training. We were behind in the training. We weren't prepared for the training to get these welders up to the RMD process. I'd like to have a little bit of a head start on the training of the people that were supposed to come down there. I think we failed on that. You know what I mean? It was one of those things by the time we got the training facility up to where it should have been, I think we were months late, and we let Kiewit down, I believe, at the beginning of the project. But we got it together. But I'd like to have gotten ahead of the training so that we knew what the weld process was. At first, it was between two contractors, and when it was between two contractors, the welding process wasn't really known because one contractor may have gone a different way with the weld out. But I think that would have been the key to a better start.
And Bruce.
Having a couple hundred more acres what we would do next time. If you're looking at the picture there, we own over 1,000 acres there. Unfortunately, the outside the fence area is governed by an agreement with the Sierra Club. And shocker, but the Sierra Club was not about to grant us use of additional space there that we own, but had a covenant on. So it did have to be jammed into a pretty tight area.
Okay. One point I just want to say that Danny mentioned earlier about some of the members joining the Sierra Club, which is a terrific idea. There's nothing like a voice from the inside, and it's something that we should all be thinking about doing throughout the United States, not just the Sierra Club, but these other environmental organizations. We can maybe beat them at their own game, but when it comes to getting people out for the hearings and the legislation that needs to be put forth, the building trades and the UA are second to none in getting people out to these hearings. So with that, I will open it up to questions from the floor if anybody has a question for any of our panelists. And before that, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for being here. They took time out of their busy schedules. Any questions? Don't be shy. I know it's lunchtime. All right, Patrick. Thanks, everybody.
You do
Sorry.
have a question, Mike.
Matt Panconi, a question.
This one's not from Jeff Nelson, I promise. The question I had was that mobile app that you used for tracking. What was that app again that you used, and how was the interaction and the training on site with all the players, the foremen, the superintendents, and how long and how hard was that to get everyone on board to embrace that tracking mechanism?
It was the app was called Mobile Frame, And it was pretty intuitive, and everybody caught on pretty quick. And it's a smaller company, but it was scalable. I mean, like I said, we had 52,000 welds, 18,000 bolt-ups. We kept track of both in this one system that was really, started with a couple guys in their garage who developed this thing, but it was scalable to large scale, very intuitive, and very flexible to make changes to suit the project's demands. If you wanted to look at things one way versus another way, our quality engineers could slice and dice the data for, the format FERC was looking for, but, we're trying to, develop our own things as we get more and more into, especially the oil and gas business. But the app was called Mobile Frame, and it was pretty widely adopted at the job.
I know I was at a conference down in San Antonio, and Keywood had a panel, and one of the topics of the panel was IT. And I know you guys are ahead of the frame as far as IT implementation on projects. On a job of that size, did you have a full complement of coders and computer coders that would take that data and custom make and customize a out-of-the-box software for that project?
We did limited amounts of that. So as far as just IT, the job, for the most part, had one IT person on the job in Lusby, and then we did some coding back in Kansas City. We have some guys there. But it was surprisingly limited.
Thank you very much. Congratulations on a successful project.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks to all the membership in here for making Cove Point a success.
Any other questions? General President McManus.
It's more of a statement and a question, and maybe to Bill and Sean and Danny. The finishing strong, the start of the job. The worries from the international were different as the project rolled along, and certainly that you can have a fantastic project and spun it around and you're rolling along good. Now we're down to the last 10% of a project. A project like that, as we know, can have a fantastic 90%, and then the last 10% it can really blow up on us, and all that good work and all that good planning goes that way. And the elephant in the room, and the end users are in the room, and the contractors are in the room, and maybe some advice to managers as we go forward. John Yale put the Finishing Strong program in there with the Standard of Excellence, and it was really geared, and I went down and spoke myself with the UA delegation about the elephant in the room is absenteeism in a lot of ways. And you can see it, 75 local unions, travelers all over the place being welcomed and traveled, but they're away from home. And as you get to the end of the job, their pockets are getting filled. They're human beings. They want to have a hot dog in their own backyard rather than somewhere else, or maybe take a day here, take a day there, and maybe in the spirit of Cal, he shows up every day for work. And we have our hands full in the United Association. We have our hands full in this industry. It's in the open shop industry as well, too. But I think when we did the Finishing Strong, just not the Standard of Excellence rolling it out, when we doubled back, and Sean and Danny and the user there, I think that helps stem the tide there. But maybe we speak on that last 10% of that job getting through, and the absenteeism, because today the environment is different than when we built Cove Point, because there's so many more options for the travelers on so many more different projects out there for ourselves. So it's something the industry has to be aware of. The local unions have to be on top of it every which way. There is a human factor, but maybe you guys could speak on that, and congratulations on a great project there too.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, when we did that, Mark, when everybody came in, you and Jimmy Moss and myself, John Yale, and all of us, when we did that, it was quite an investment. Remember, Keywood pretty much shut the job down for about half of every shift. And I got to tell you, I was thinking, we're just going to talk to these guys, and that's pretty much going to be it. It's going to be a dog and pony show. But I had members and some people that I didn't even know come up to me and say how much they appreciated it. And so the approach, I think, on the job site, I wasn't on the job site, but I got to believe that things turned around after that meeting. I was just hearing it from people who never say a good thing about anything, but local guys. But I think that was something that should be done more often. the guys in the field like to hear from our general president about how much you're concerned about it and how much you care about it. You take the time out of your schedule to meet with the guys that are turning the wrenches. They love that. I do. And I don't think it happens enough. And I'd like to thank you for that. And John Yale, too. It was a great experience, and I think it should be done more often.
Go ahead, Gary.
I really believe there's the unnamed quantity here is that people like to be appreciated. And what Danny just said, the guy that's under the hood, the guy's turning the wrench, they like to know that the people they're working for, the project they're on, number one, we tried to make that a world-class project so they're part of something greater than themselves, and that we appreciated them being there. The owner appreciated them being there. Mark, the International, appreciated them being there. I think that's more important going forward than I think most people understand. The guys in the trenches that do the work need to be appreciated, and it needs to be shown. And I think we need to do more of that. And the last 10%, that's how you get people committed. And I think that's what we had here as a team, as we committed ourselves and we asked the people to make a commitment to get that job finished and finished right. Because what a feather in the UA's cap, what a feather in the building trades cap, what a feather in Kiewit's cap, Dominion's cap. Everybody gets kudos. But the guys on the ground is what gets it done, and they're part of it, and they feel part of it. I think that's really important.
Okay. I think that about wraps it up, Patrick.